That's when you know Vtec pop, yo. We are back! K24 stuff again. We already went through bore, stroke, piston rings, compression, volume, why K24 is K24. All that stuff pertains to the bottom end. Now, time for the head. What? The energy is different because it's early in the morning. Usually we do this at about midnight. Right now it's 8 a.m. So, any case, we are on the head. There's so much horsepower in the head. Other than compression and all that other stuff that makes horsepower down low, the head is really important. Head flow, cam profiles, valves, they all accumulate to something and it makes horsepower. The one thing that Honda is synonymous with is Vtec.
Vtec! Turbo! Hey! Shit! Hey!
You know you gotta give me a Vtec sound, right?
No, you That's when you know Vtec pop, yo. So what the hell is Vtec? First of all, you gotta understand cams. This is a dual overhead cam. This is a cam. If we only had one, that'd be a single cam. But we have two. Wow, that was so easy. Yep. Dual overhead cam. Now you know. There's other engines like push rods, V8s and all that stuff, but we're not getting into that. The primary thing with Hondas is you see here how all the Honda kids leave the car shows, you know, breaking that Vtec open, right? What is Vtec and how does it work, right? Real simply, Vtec is variable cam lift. So that means is there's three lobes in this cam. The little profile, which is the two outers right here, is when you're cruising around town and you don't need a whole bunch of horsepower, but you kind of want your low end grunt is right here. If you notice, that cam profile is shorter than this one. It's got the peak is a little higher. There's not as much duration. It's not as sharp as that, right? So that's what happens when you're cruising around town. That's the cam that this engine rides on. When you want to get into some horsepower and you got it matted to the floor at a certain RPM, a certain oil pressure, it rides on this cam. You see, this cam is taller than this cam. It has a lot more duration. The valves open more and they open longer. Okay, that's great. Now you see the physical part of the cam. But how does it do that? How does an engine run on two separate cam profiles? The way that Honda did it through the rockers. There's three rockers here. On normal driving, these rockers are independent of one another. You can see that, right? Like I'm pushing down the middle and the two outers are not working. So no matter what happens, this stays free. At a higher RPM, there's something called a Vtec solenoid. So oil pressure comes in and out of here and it shuts a valve in here. It shuts a valve in here. It sends oil pressure up into the head here, into the rod inside here, and locks these little pins in. There it is. So, hope you appreciate this because this sucked the other night. These little pins in here actually gets pushed out this way. So essentially, this pin that sits in here pushes out from the oil pressure because there's oil that travels into this rod, into this rocker, pushes that pin out, essentially pushing this pin here this way. Once that pin is locked this way, you see how the rockers are all locked together? So now it's gonna ride on that one right there. So that's basically how Vtec works. So once all that locks in, you ride on the large cam, and the cam profile is taller and a longer duration, giving it more lift on the cam and keeping it open a bit longer. So that's basic Vtec. Other manufacturers have the same similar system, different names, but principle, again, the same. Vtec is pretty old technology. It's been around Honda since, if I remember correctly, I'm gonna get executed for this on the internet. I know it. 1991.
Zero confidence.
So Honda came out with something else. They came out with ivtec. And what ivtec is basically a VTC system. VTC is variable timing control. Now that they got the cam to have 2 profiles, now they want to move the cam in different timing. That also would affect your power band, mid-range, low-end, high-end. So if you could move the cam, how it's timed against the crank, you also pick up mid-range horsepower, you pick up a little bit of low-end grunt. To show you and explain to you how that all works in here, I got to put the motor together. It's easier with a visual. Torque wrench, torque.
How many foot-pounds?
16. Why do I have a Sharpie in my hand, right? Really, really simple. I'm gonna explain this, I'm gonna dumb it down as much as I can. VTC, variable timing control. So we know Vtec. Vtec is lift and duration because it switches between cam profiles. So Vtec controls how far the valve opens and how long it stays open with the cam journal. So what is VTC? VTC is variable timing control. It moves the cam. It actually physically changes the timing of the cam versus the crank. This is why I have the Sharpie in my hand. I'm gonna draw a line. This arbitrary line really doesn't mean anything. From 1,000 to 10,000 RPM, that line will always stay the same because this cam gear is solid, doesn't move, doesn't do anything. So no matter what, this will always consistently be the same. Here, on the other hand, if you notice, the cam gear is way larger than this one. If you look, I drew a line from here, and then I drew a line here. So what this does is it moves, it rotates in a certain degree to offset the timing of the intake cam. At 1,000 RPM, it stays like this. At a certain point in the RPM band, this line and this line will differ versus here versus the crank. Well, how does that help, right? By changing the timing, you're changing your characteristics of how the engine intakes air and then obviously how it's gonna take the air out. This one only does it on the intake side. There's some engines that do it on both sides. So it kind of moves the power band. The Vtec is how much and how long. This is basically when. That make sense?
Nate, he's not making any sense.
Yeah, this sucks. Nate, what do you mean? This is Nate. Nate is like the guy. This Nate.
The guy that sweeps the floors.
Yeah, he sweeps the floors, and he's pretty good with the ECU stuff.
And eating.
So Nate knows a thing or two about VTC. He's probably better at explaining it than me. Yo, explain VTC.
It's variable cam timing.
Yeah, in idiot terms.
You know, a normal B series engine.
Yes.
When you need to advance and retard the exhaust, well, it allows you to continuously vary it based on what the ECU commands it to do. So what happens is, you know, back in the day, you'd be like, okay, we want to advance the intake to retard the exhaust to. It gives you the best of both worlds. No, this engine does not only have VTEC, but it also has the ability for you to shift the torque curve, optimize the torque curve throughout the, you know, the RPM range. So you can, they say it's infinitely variable, but it's not. You know, you have some limitations to how much it can advance, and there's on some engine manufacturers, there's physical limitations, and some, if you don't know what you're doing, you can actually over-rotate, but you know, you should know that you're not going to try to advance 35 degrees in the intake, you know, or at least you shouldn't. I mean, that's basically all it is. It just allows you to...
It's a variable cam gear.
Yes. So I think this engine only has the intake.
Yeah.
Intake only. So, which is fine. You know, a lot of times the exhaust side is only mainly they use it for smog. You know, in the cold starts, they want to light the catalytic converter early, so this way you don't have that rotten egg smell and destroy the cats when you first initially start the car. But intake advanced gives you huge advantage over, like, say for instance, a B series engine or a C, you know, where you have a fixed cam gears. You can either have, you know, torque move in a fixed direction, whereas this here, you know, throughout the RPM range, you can program in there advance, retard, you know, whatever it is you want to do.
So we're gonna bring back Nate later when it gets more technical.
I like Nate. He doesn't stumble on his words.
Take this. God damn it, Nathan.
I just learned that he's the guy that tuned Sun King's Z.
No, not me, man.
Last piece of the puzzle. Steady. That's it. Spark plugs, and we're ready for dyno.